Hi, and welcome once again to Ruby's Classic Cooking. And this morning I'm making fruitcake. So without further ado, I'm going to dive right into my recipe and start measuring out ingredients. Well, I'm going to measure out 2 cups of raisins. I've been weighing out my fruit, and now I have to measure out some of my ingredients. Okay, 2 cups of raisins. 1 cup of currants, and I only buy these for my fruitcake because it calls for them. Yeah, they're like tiny black raisins. That's the only way I can describe them. And yeah, I just gotta put my measuring cup into the pan because then if anything spills over, it just goes in the pan. Okay, I'm gonna chop some dates now, and I'll be back when I'm finished chopping dates, which I'm probably going to use my paring knife and not my utility knife. They're both good knives. I'm so used to using my smaller paring knife that I really don't use my utility knife a lot, but I'm getting into using it more nowadays. Anyway. Okay, it occurs to me that I should probably maybe do a bit of a demonstration of chopping my fruit here, chopping my dates here. So I'm just going to show you chopping my dates up here. Just a question of chopping them in about three or four pieces, depends on how big the date is. But I just chop them mostly to make sure there's no pits in here. And I haven't come across any. And I don't expect to, but you never know. You can't tell from that if there's a pit hiding in. You can't tell from that if there's a pit hiding inside that or not until you actually cut it. And nope, no pits. There you go, there's a cup of chopped dates. And these are nice fresh ones, so sometimes when they're not so fresh, it's really, it's a lot harder to chop them. They give you resistance. But when they're nice and fresh like these guys are, they chop up pretty easily. And as you can see, I'm being a little generous here with my cup of dates. Like I said, I make this cake once a year, and I'm not going to go skimpy on the ingredients because I'm not a bake shop. I don't have profit margins to meet and so on. In fact, that's what I think makes people think that fruitcake isn't any good for anything but a doorstop, because people don't add, don't add the fruit that they need to. They skimp on it thinking it's okay, but it just makes your fruitcake less desirable, less yummy. So I'm just going to chop up my nuts now. My recipe calls for walnuts, but I prefer pecans, so I started substituting pecans for walnuts a long time ago. I know you could get out your nut chopper and chop these if you want to, but really, I'm just going to use my knife. Goes faster. They don't have to be perfect or pretty or whatever. They're not on display. I'm not putting these on the top of a pecan pie where people are going to be seeing them. They're going to be chopped up and they're going to be in my fruitcake. I started making this fruitcake back in about 1978 because I was looking for a Christmas present for my dad. It was very difficult to buy for, and so I started making it. And when my dad passed away in 1989, I nearly stopped making fruitcake, and my husband said, you know, I really enjoy your fruitcake, so could you please make it? So I did, but I used to make, sometimes I would make 2, but nowadays I only make 1. I used to give Dad a whole fruitcake, and some years being involved in different things before COVID, I would donate a whole fruitcake, not a whole fruitcake to one place, but some pieces off a fruitcake to various things. But with COVID going on, and with the price of everything rising so quickly, I'm not going to make an extra fruitcake if we don't need it. I mean, this fruitcake's probably going to cost me over $40. It's, I'll tell you, making a fruitcake is a commitment, and you definitely want to make sure you're following a good recipe when you make one. This is 4 ounces of nuts, which is 100 grams of nuts, which is like when you buy a package of nuts. That's what's in them, basically 100 grams, 4 ounces. And this is my candied mix, 4 ounces of candied mixed peel, Well, not quite, because I also have my orange peeling over here, which I have to chop up to bring it up, to bulk it up. Like, that's a new innovation. I just started doing that in the last couple of years, making my own orange peeling. And I will do a demo on that if people want to see that, because when you're doing your Christmas cooking, you really need candied orange peel. And they think it's worth a small fortune at the specialty shops or at the grocery store. And basically, like I said, it's free. I needed a quarter of a cup of sugar. It's the only thing I had to pay for, because I had an orange for breakfast and peeled my orange and used my orange peeling, you know, which you're gonna go. But yeah, and that's what it turns out like. Candied orange peel. Oh, here we go, and that's the rest of my 4 ounces of fruit. That's going in there along with this. I'll make my, that makes up my 4 ounces, or my 100 grams of candied mixed peel. That's the deluxe peel mix, which I bought in bulk. So that's why I had to get out my kitchen scale, because I had to weigh these things out. Now, here's my red and green cherries. Green cherries were not that easy to find this year, but I found them. I give these a little stir around before I add the rum. The whole reason I'm putting these together today to make the cake tomorrow is so the rum has a chance to soak into all of the fruit and flavor my fruit. Because of course, when I bake this cake for about 3 hours, most of the alcohol is going to bake out of it, but it's going to leave behind the flavor of the rum, which is very good in your fruit cake. Now, let's show you what this looks like. I just kind of stir these all together here a little bit with my hands, and then I will just be pouring the rum in on top, and then I'll put a closed cover on here to keep it from evaporating on me overnight. And then that'll be it until tomorrow. And I'll be back tomorrow when I add flour to this fruit and then start making my fruit cake. And back in the good old days, I used to do the whole fruit cake by hand, but nowadays I use my stand mixer. I'm not so young as I was over 40 years ago. So guess what? I don't have any problem using a stand mixer when I'm mixing this up. Okay, I'm back again. I've got my saran wrap over here, and I've got my rum. Calls for a half a cup. So a cup of rum is going right in on top of all this fruit. That's about 150 milliliters. It's a little over half a cup. Let's pour that all over my fruit like that. My fruitcake fruit, it's going to sit there till tomorrow and soak up that lovely rum into the fruit, and then I'm going to be actually making the cake tomorrow. So that's my prep work for my fruitcake. Hi everybody, and welcome once again to Ruby's Classic Cooking. Today it's continuation of Fruitcake Day, which is Fruitcake Part 2. So let's take these rings off, because I'm going to dive right into Part 2. Yesterday I added my rum to here, and I left all this fruit to sit overnight. And now this morning I'm going to uncover it. Yum, a lovely smell. Wonderful smell. And now dredge this in a half a cup of flour, all this fruit, because if you don't do that, your fruit will all sink to the bottom of your cake and won't be distributed all through the fruit cake. So you definitely need to do that. So here it is, and this is the one messy thing I do for my fruit cake. I do use my hands for this, because there really isn't any other way to do it. And you just kind of do this until all of the fruit is kind of coated with a little bit of flour. Oh, there's my oven, up to temperature 275 degrees Fahrenheit, which is only 135 degrees Celsius. Fruit cake cooks for 3 hours in a very low, slow oven. And 275 Fahrenheit or 135 Celsius is about as low as it goes. So you bake this cake it's sort of a day-long commitment. You know you're not going too far, well, you've got a fruitcake in the oven. And when it gets being close to being done, you gotta test it and see if it's done or not, like within a half an hour. Although it takes a long time to be completely done, and 5 or 10 minutes isn't going to hurt anything, but you do have to get it out when it's done. The other thing I'm going to tell you right now, if you do this cake, when you get it out of the oven, turn it out of the pan and put it on your cooling rack, leave it alone and let it sit there until it cools to room temperature. That will take hours. Take 4 or 5 hours for it to come to room temperature. You do not want to wrap up a hot fruit cake in plastic wrap, because if you do, it will sweat inside of there and it will mold, which is not good at all. You don't want your fruit cake molding. That's why you put all this rum and all this fruit that's full of sugar in it, so that it will keep. And it will keep for ages. You don't have to refrigerate it. Like right now, it's the 10th of November today, and I want this fruit cake for Christmas. So I want at least a month or a month and a half for it to age so that it will be ready to eat. I mean, I can eat some today, but it will be very sharp, and it won't be at all the lovely mellow flavor it'll be in a month's time. So anyway, still good to eat, but even better in a month's time. So I'm just flouring up my fruit here, and I'll show you what that looks like. See, I have just dredged my fruit, and see there's a little bit of white flour left on some of it, but that's okay because, oops, raisins there. It will get into the liquid of the, when I add this to my main body of my cake, that will disappear. It won't have little bits of flour on it when it's cooked. So there we go, that's my fruit dredged, and that just goes to one side until I'm at the very end of making the cake, and then it gets mixed into the batter. So now I'm going to carry on with the batter. Before I carry on too far with the mixing, here's my prepared pan. Now I'm going to start with my ingredients. Now, your fruitcake pan needs to be an 8 by 8 by 3 inch deep pan, or I've used a 10-inch tube pan, or right now I'm using my big Pampered Chef pan, which fills it up very nicely. And what I do for this pan is I butter it, I grease it with butter, and then I put parchment paper in it, and then I grease the parchment paper. I don't do this for every cake I make, but for fruit cake, I do it once a year. Anyway, the first thing that goes into my bowl, back in the day, I used to beat these all by hand. Now, I'm making use of my stand mixer. I'm a lot older than I was in 1979 when I started making this cake. I'm going to dive into this recipe. Now, the very first thing that I add is 1 cup of butter, and be sure it's real butter, not margarine, because you don't want to go to all of this trouble for a cake and use margarine, which is not going to give you the flavor of butter, let me tell you. Okay, and that's just my cup of butter that I have cut off, and I am just going to kind of cut that while it was on the pound, and then cut it this way, cut it this way. This is kind of room temperature butter, so it softens. And now I'm going to cream my butter. Now what that means is I'm going to put it in under my mixer, and I'm going to beat just the butter, beat some air into it. Now, you may think that's an unnecessary step, but it's not. Creaming your butter is important. It will affect the quality of your finished product, because you have to have air beaten into it. Now I'm just going to show you what it looks like just a few minutes under the beater, and it has creamed up my butter very nicely. Okay, a half a dozen eggs and 2 cups of brown sugar. This is what I'm going to do. I have 8 1/4 cups of brown sugar here. Nice old-fashioned brown sugar, not the yellow brown sugar that I normally use. It's the same price as the other stuff, and this caramelizes a lot nicer than it gives a better flavor to my cake. So what I do is, I have 8 of these, so I put a 1/4 cup in and an egg, a 1/4 cup in, an egg, and so on back and forth until I'm finished with my eggs and brown sugar. That's how I make sure that it's done gradually. So first I'm going to put in some brown sugar right in on top of my butter. So I'll just show you the first one. When I'm all finished adding all of the eggs and all the brown sugar to the butter, I'll come back and show you what that looks like before I start adding the flour. And this is a mixture of molasses and apple juice. which may sound like a bit of an odd combination, but it adds a lovely flavor to my cake. All right, so here I go. This is 1/4 cup of brown sugar and 1 egg that's been added to my butter. And here's the batter after 3 eggs and 3 brown sugars. See, it's starting to look more like a batter. Okay, phase 1 is complete. This is all 2 cups of my brown sugar and 6 eggs, all in here with my 1 cup of butter. So there you go, all in there. It's very liquidy and very much like a very liquid batter. Now I'm going to be adding flour and some other spices. Now I have to kind of stir together the molasses and the apple juice here, and I'm going to add two liquid additions and 3 dry additions. So I just have a fork here to stir this up with. Just kind of reduce those 2 layers into 1 layer. They put in my flour here, 2 cups of flour go in here, and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, not baking powder, we're talking baking soda here. So that goes in here. And then I have a teaspoon of cloves, cinnamon, and allspice right here, okay? So those go right in here too. And now, I'm just going to take my little measuring spoon here and just give this a little stir up so that I can combine these together. I don't usually bother with these separate bowls when I'm doing something like this, but when it's fruit cake, I take the extra trouble. Let's just stir that together like that. Homogeneous looking, there we go. See, all your spices and everything have been integrated in there. There we go. So I'm going to add about 1/3 of this. I'm just going to eyeball that. Just dump it about, so that would be about 2/3 of a cup of flour roughly. Now I'm going to beat this a little bit on my beater. Then I'm going to add 1/2 of this mixture, which I'm stirring together, my molasses and apple juice, and then make another dry, another liquid, another dry, and then comes the fun part, adding folding the fruit, all this fruit together into this batter. Okay, here's my lovely dark rich batter, all ready to receive all that fabulous fruit that's right up there. So I think that there's room in here for all of this fruit. This is my fruit cake spoon, my spoon I use for many, many years. I've had a spoon for a long time. All right, let me just dump all this fruit out of my pan right into my bowl. And there it is. Little odd bits here. And now I will just fold this into my batter because I want to get all of this fruit wet with the batter and not in big clumps. I want it spread evenly through my batter. Fruit cake batter makes about enough batter to suspend your fruit. That's about all it's good for. That's what it's used for, is to suspend all of this fruit so that you have fruit cake. And you have, well, you saw the fruit I put in here yesterday. It's all gone in here now. And you just keep folding and turning it through the batter until all of your fruit is coated with the batter nice and evenly. And the batter is, you know, just right there with all the fruit all through it, and there's no pockets of it. It's just plain batter and no fruit. And then I'll get my prepared pan and put this on, and then this cake goes in the oven at 275 degrees Fahrenheit or 135 degrees Celsius for 3 to 3.5 hours. And I have a wonderful Pampered Chef stoneware pan that I use for cooking my fruit cake in. It holds the heat and helps make that nice, gentle. I used to use a stainless steel pan. I have used a 10-inch angel food cake pan, and of course your 8x8 by 3-inch fruit cake pan you can also use. So as long as it has the volume to hold the entire batter, that's what you need. I like my stoneware because it gives me more temperature, gentle temperature. And this right here wants to have a gentle temperature. Okay, so that looks finished. Now that is ready to go into my pan. Now doesn't that look interesting, eh? Believe me, it'll be the most gorgeous, delicious cake ever. Fruitcake filling, ready for filling with fruitcake batter. 3 to 3.5 hours from now, I'll bring you back and show you what the finished baked fruitcake looks like. And once I get it turned out and on the cooling rack, then they'll sit there for probably 5 to 7 hours to come up to room temperature. You can't rush anything with fruitcake. I mean, 3.5 hours in the oven and then another 5 hours sitting around cooling. Actually, an effort to make it. Well, once you have it, you see the size of the cake I'm getting. This will be my fruitcake for everybody to share for the whole Christmas season. I don't leave any of the batter behind. This stuff is too precious. Unlike a commercial fruitcake, I'm not going to put specially selected little cherries and things on nuts on top so that it's decorated to look pretty on top. My fruit is all inside the cake, not all lying in a thin layer on top. So that's the difference between a homemade fruitcake and a commercially prepared fruitcake. They want it to look pretty, so you'll buy one, and if you're buying it for somebody else, you don't really care what it tastes like. But my fruitcake is for people who want this for themselves, and they do care what it tastes like. 3 hours later, I'm now going to test with my cake tester to see if it comes out clean, and that is clean. That is clean. So 3 hours, and my cake is ready to go. Look at that. Isn't that a beautiful, gorgeous, big fruitcake? And here around the edge, if you look, you can see just slightly dark brown around the edges, and it's just starting to pull away from the pan just a little teeny bit. And so I'm not surprised that the cake tester came out clean. I got that tricky maneuver accomplished, and now I'm just going to peel the parchment paper off of here. Because of the butter, it won't stick at all. And that is that over here. There you go. One beautiful Christmas cake. And now I can flip it from here to here, and there you go. One beautiful baked fruitcake. Dark fruitcake, I should say. I think I mentioned that before. It's dark fruitcake. There we go. And I'll take some still pictures of this to go up on the website. I hope you enjoyed my video today, and I hope you'll like it. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel, and I hope you'll make some comments below. And if you actually try to make fruitcake, I hope it turns out for you, and I hope this recipe was a big help. I'll be putting all the metric equivalents and everything in my description file down below when I write this up. So I hope you can get together with family and friends and have a great holiday season. And I hope you'll join me next time on Ruby's Classic Cooking as I continue my Christmas baking season. Bye for now.